Okay, and now we have to talk about the sponsors. So the sponsors of this week are Tovi Menzelovsky.
Yes.
And it's Legal Nishmas whom?
The legal mission is his father, Ruvain Breb Eliezer. And I just now picked up a sponsor as I got into my car. It's in honor of our Maggid Shir's wedding, that the chuppah should be Be'itoy Ubizmanoi. And they should build a Bayis Nemon B'Yisrael Al Yisoidei HaChasidus VaMitzvah.
Amen.
Did the sponsor stick that in, or you did it yourself?
Which Chasidus?
The Lakewood style, wherever it is they live, whichever one they live.
Okay, I'm sorry, I had.
You should have a safe trip. You should have a safe trip. And everything should go well. Okay. The broadcast. Remember, it's the broadcast.
It's just the broadcast.
Shir is still not for sale. We're holding out.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And thank you very much for sponsoring the broadcast.
Okay. Remind me the chassan's name.
Zev Ben Tzvi. Zevi Weingarten.
Zev Weingarten. Okay.
And I still have to get you the information on the broadcast. I'm not sure exactly what you're doing.
Okay.
Okay. So we were back on it. We'll get back anyway. Akiva, wherever you're going to, have a very safe trip.
Right now I'm going home. Thank you.
For davening. Okay, very good. Does it
Wherever
nice
I'm
item?
gonna go- Yeah, Baruch Hashem. Baruch
Okay,
Hashem.
excellent.
Very nice.
Okay, Baruch Hashem, so we're back on track. Okay, so let's get back to the Mishnah. Hazorik, someone throws something. There's a trajectory in the air. And as it's in the air before the Nacha, Viniskar, and you remember that it was Shabbos, and then Kolt Acher, then someone else grabbed it in midair. Or Kolt a Kelev, or a dog grabbed it in midair. So I literally didn't do the Hanacha, because Hanacha was done by somebody else who disturbed the trajectory. Oisha Nisrafa, or it got burnt in midair. It went over Rabbi Yochanan Zakai's head, and it got burnt in the air. Potter, your potter. So this is a very interesting case with two components, so the Gemara is going to analyze it. Zorik lasis chabura. What if the reason why you threw it wasn't because you wanted to be maver dalaramis? You were angry at somebody, and you had this rock that you wanted to throw at somebody to hurt somebody. Bain ba'adam, sai if it was at a person. Bain b'behema, sai if it was a behema. V'niskar at shaloi nasis chabura. I threw the rock, and before the rock hit its target, the person who threw it remembered that it was Shabbos. Potter. He still wanted to give the guy chabur. He just didn't want to do it on Shabbos. Potter is going to be potter. Zaklau. This is the rule. Kol chai v'chatois. Any person who would be chai v'chatos, einun chayovin, they don't have a chi of chatos, ad shetehei tchiloson v'soifen shkaga. The entire period of time that the Isser is being done has to be in a matzav of shkaga, meaning he either didn't know that the malacha was aser, or the thing that he was doing was aser, or in the case of Shabbos, he didn't know that it was Shabbos today. Tchilason shkaga v'soifen zadoin, or tchilason zadoin v'soifen shkaga, peturin ad shetehei tchilason v'soifen shkaga. They'll be potter until it's a shkaga from beginning until end. Frek the Gemara. Let's look at the Mishnah. The first case of the Mishnah we assume is he threw something, he remembered in midair that it's Shabbos, but that's not all that happened. And then it was Kol Ta'achar or Kol Ta'Kelev or Shnisrifa. So it's mashma that in order for this person to have been potter, the fact that he merely remembered in the middle that it was Shabbos would not have made a difference. The only reason why he was potter is because it was Kol Ta'achar, Kol Ta'Kelev, or Shnisrifa. And that's what the Gemara is being medayik on. Hanacha, had it landed as thrown, and all that happened was that in midair you remembered that it was Shabbos, chayiv, you would have been chayiv. But that's not consistent with the end of the Mishnah. V'aloi niskar, but he did remember while the object was in midair before the hanacha occurred. Utnan, and we learned Kol chai v'chatois, all chai v'chatois, einon chayavin, achet hey, tchiloson, v'soifon shkaga. We learned that the chai v'chatois are only chayiv if we're shogig from beginning to end. Zodoin means bemezid, knowing that it's Shabbos and knowing that what you're doing is usher to do on Shabbos. So the Gemara's kasha here is from the Mishnah's mashma that only if it was kol to kelev or kol to achar will it become potter. But if it merely landed, even though I had remembered in the middle that it was Shabbos, it would be chayiv. Yet the Seifa says that it has to be zodoin mitchilasoi vatsoifai. So in fact, it should be potter. So that is the steer between the Reisha and the Seifa. Omer of Kahana, Seifa ason lelechto masna. They used to have an interesting type of thing. When they wanted to carry barrels of wine with an animal, the way they would do it, and we've seen pictures of it, is that they would create some type of harness. Imagine like a big U made out of wood, and they would put that U on the back of the donkey so that the two sides of the U hung down on its sides. And then to the side of that wooden U, on either side, they would fasten a barrel of wine to it with some type of rope. So it would look like two barrels of wine side by side with a U in between that held it up. And then they put that over the back of the donkey, and the donkey was thereby able to hold the two barrels. And they would also have to tie, the barrels would be connected to that U bracket with some type of rope. So Elmer Rav Kahana, Seifa Asan Lelechto Masna. The Seifa was talking about Lechto Masna. So what does that mean? If my projectile was just a rock, and I threw the rock, in fact, even though I remembered while it was in midair, I'm still going to be chayiv, because I can no longer do anything to stop that rock from continuing on its trajectory. When I threw it, once it leaves my hand, from my input, all that has to be done has already been accomplished. And therefore, even if I remember in middle that it's Shabbos, that would not stop me. It would still be mechuyev v'chatos. And that's why the Reish and the Mishnah had to have something else occur in order for me to be potter. And the Reish and the Mishnah had to introduce kol ta'achar, kol ta'kelev, or shenishra for potter. But the Seifa of the Mishnah, where it says that after you threw something, in the middle, you remembered that it was Shabbos and it would be potter, that's if there's a string. So you're holding on to the string, you threw this U bracket. Imagine you have this U bracket, it's not connected to the chamor now, and you throw it, and you're holding on to the string that would have normally been used to tie the barrel of wine onto it, but you're holding that string. So you can technically still pull it back. So your input is still needed to complete this malacha. So since while it was midair, while you still had an opportunity, it was still within your ability to pull that rope back and stop it from making the hanocha in 4 amas. If in middle, at that point you remember that it was Shabbos and you don't pull it back, that means the last part of the malacha was done, b'mezid, and therefore you'd be potter from the korban. Frekta Gemara, that's very schwer to say, because lechta umasna oigdu b'yodahu. Even if it was shogig from beginning to end, if I'm holding on to a string that's connected to this piece of wood, and I throw that piece of wood, I throw that U bracket, 4 amas, and it lands in Rosh Hashanah, and I'm shogig the entire time, I'll still be potter. Because we learned earlier in the sugyas that unless the item is totally dislodged from its mokim hanocha, it's not considered that it traveled. We learned it more lagabe Rosh Hashanah and Rosh Hashanah. As long as part of this item is still in the Rosh Hashanah, we don't consider it that any part of this item has went from the Rosh Hashanah to the Rosh Hashanah. We had it with the basket full of peiros, and there was a machlokes if it was filled with chardal, even if it was filled with small things, are those individual peiros considered to have crossed the border? But if you're talking about the basket itself for sure has not yet left the Rosh Hashanah completely, and therefore on the basket you'd be potter. So here too, since there's a string connected to the item that I threw that I can still pull back, we don't consider it a proper Zrika of Dalaramas. So Oibazoi, how could you say that the Sefer that says the Sefer that says that it's chayiv is when you had a string connected, when there was a string attached to what you threw, and the reason why your potter is only because you remembered in the middle that it was Shabbos and you still let it continue. So we look at it like you finished off the malacha b'mezid. Even if you finished off the malacha b'shoyed, you should be potter because there's a string attached. So for the Gemara, lechta masna Agudah b'yodehu, and for the Gemara, kegoin shenischaven lasas chabura. The case that we're talking about in the Sefer, the Zeh Klal, is speaking where we want to make a chabura. Now, if your malacha is making a chabura and not being maver something dalad amas b'shus harabim, then it doesn't matter if it's Agudah b'yodehu. So the case of the Sefer that says Zeh Klal, kol chayov chatois, inan chayovin at shehet chilason v'soifen shkoga, that means it was talking about the following action. You had a piece of wood that there was a string attached to it, and you were angry at somebody, and you wanted to throw this wood at somebody, or there was a behemoth that was charging you, and you wanted to throw the piece of wood at that behemoth. Now it doesn't matter anymore if you're holding on to that string, because the Agudah b'yodehu only prevents it from being a havara dalaramas. It doesn't prevent the animal from getting a chabura. So what the Mishnah is saying is, if you wanted to throw this harness, if you wanted to throw it at a chamor, for instance, you wanted to throw it, but you're still holding the string. If you found out about Shabbos before it hit the chamor, you could pull the string back and stop it. So therefore, it's considered a mazid. The malacha had finished with a mazid because before it struck your target, you could have pulled it back and you didn't, and you knew it was Shabbos, you didn't, and you're mazid. But if you were totally oblivious to Shabbos and hit the animal, even though you're holding the string the whole time, that does not take away from the malacha. So Zog to Gemara, Seifa Ashan lelechtu masna. So tomorrow you'll say that the Seifa of the Mishnah is kegoin shenischaven lasas chabura. Frek the Gemara, how could you say that the Zeh Klal in our Mishnah is talking about somebody who's trying to make a chabura? The Mishnah listed that case off as a separate item a moment ago. Hanami Tanina. It says it right before that. Zorak lasas chabura. Hazorak lasas chabura. Bein ba'adam, bein bebehema, v'niskar actually nasas chabura potter. So how could you say that's the chiddush of the Zeh Klal in the Mishnah when that's already something that's listed beferish in the Mishnah? Ela amarava b'mavir. The Seifa that says Zeh Klal is not discussing somebody who threw a projectile, dalad amis, and if he threw a projectile and he's holding on to the string, of course he's not going to be chayiv. It's talking about where someone was holding it in his hand and he was walking with it, and he walked 4 amis in Rishus Harabim with this item, and therefore it doesn't matter if it's Agudah b'yodehu. He's holding everything, but he's walking 4 amis with it, and if he remembered the middle of the 4 amis that he's in, that it's Shabbos today, and it's also to carry on Shabbos, then we say that the whole malacha did not happen with chiyuv, and therefore it's going to be potter. Fact Gemara, it still doesn't make sense, because you have a Mishnah that the whole thing that the Mishnah is talking about is throwing, whether it was lasas chabur, whether it was to make haitzah, whether it was to make havara, it's all about throwing. So it doesn't make sense that when the Mishnah rounds it all up with a Zeh Klal, the Mishnah should divert to a whole different case, and the case of havara. For Zeh Klal katani, for Zeh Klal the katani as Rika katani. The Zeh Klal that our Mishnah finishes off with is going back on cases of Zrika. So it's not logical to say that the Zeh Klal is now referring to a case of havara. So now we're still stuck. We don't have pshat in our Mishnah. Ela amarava. So if Rava wants to learn, is Tarta katani. Don't learn the first case of our Mishnah that this all happened in one case. It was Zork, Viniskar, and Kol Acher. Rather, split up the cases of our Mishnah, which is likely the way anybody who would have read the Mishnah would have looked at it anyway, that it was 2 separate things going on. And now let's see what it says. Tartikatani, Hazorik Viniskar me'acher sheyot samiyadai. If someone threw a chayfetz, and he was throwing a dalad amis, and while it was in the air, before it made the hanacha, he remembered that it is Shabbos, and therefore it's also to throw. Inami, or a different case, loy niskar, he never remembered that it was Shabbos, but it didn't make hanacha. The kol ta'achar, somebody else pulled it out of its trajectory and made the hanacha separately. Oy kol kelev, or if a dog snapped it out of the air, snatched it out of the air, oy shenishraf, or if it burnt in midair, potter. So that's very, very simple. Once you split the cases up, then we're speaking about two cases. The first case is Zarek Veniskar, he threw something, he made the Akira B'Shogig, but the Hanocha was B'Mezid. And at this point, Rav is arguing on what we learned until now. Until now, we learned that if I throw something, it doesn't matter if while it's mid-air, I remember. Because we say, since when you threw it, you didn't know, that's your input to the malacha, it's all done. Even if you remember later, you're still going to be chayiv a korban chatas. Rava is departing from that shita. And Rava holds that even though you've done everything you could do, you threw it, if you remember in midair, before it lands, that will also mess up the shogig of your malacha, and will consider it that hanacha was done b'mezid, because you knew about it at the time, even though you were powerless to stop it at that point, it still would be potter. And the same thing as if you threw it and you were shogig the whole time, but it didn't land according to its trajectory. Rather, someone snatched it out of the air, or a dog snatched it out of the air, or it burned, potter will be potter. So that's Rava's pshat in our Mishnah. Rav Ashi Omar, Rav Ashi has a second pshat in the Mishnah. Chisur mechsura v'achikitani. And Tosfos tells us this isn't a real chisur mechsura. Ein ze mamish chisur mechsura. The Mishnah kemoishi shnuya yesh lefarishkein. The Mishnah does not need a renovation. We don't need to change the wording of the Mishnah to understand Rav Ashi's pshat. It's just a whole new pshat. So he's using the words chisur mechsura. This is how we would learn the Mishnah. Hazorik, he threw something into the air. And after it left his hand, he remembered that it's Shabbos. And in the same case, he's not changing cases like Rava. And in midair, kol ta'achar, or kol ta'kelev, or shenishavra, potter. Ha-nocha, chayiv. We will make the same diuk that the Gemara made earlier. Ha-nocha chayiv. In fact, if it would have landed, even though in middle of the air, I remembered that it was Shabbos. So he's arguing on Rava. He's saying, if it landed, even though I remembered in midair that it was Shabbos, I'll still be chayiv, because it doesn't matter if I remembered in midair. There's nothing I can do to stop this from landing. But this is where he adds in some information. When do I say that you'll be chayiv, even though in midair you remembered that it was Shabbos? Is shechazar v'shakach, that you forgot. So this is the same guy who, he's a schizophrenic. He remembers, he forgets. So he forgot that it was Shabbos. He throws a rock. In midair, he remembers that it's Shabbos. And then before the rock landed, he forgot again that it was Shabbos.
Yosy, this guy's worse than the guy who got lost and didn't know it was Shabbos.
I think
Totally.
he has a progressive disease. And as the Masechta goes on, he's becoming more and more forgetful. So, but if he didn't forget, meaning in midair, he remembered that it was Shabbos, and when it landed, he remembered that it was Shabbos, potter, then it'll be potter. So the primary difference between Rava's approach and Rav Ashi's approach is this exact case. If you throw something, and when you throw it, you're showing you didn't know that it was Shabbos, and in midair, you remember that it's Shabbos, and you can't do anything about it, and it continues to land, would that be chayiv v'chatos? According to Rava, you would not be chayiv v'chatos, because I remembered in midair, even though I'm powerless to stop that trajectory. Nevertheless, since I remembered in midair before the malacha was completed, I will not be chayiv v'chatos. According to Rav Ashi, if you remembered in midair, it doesn't matter, you'll still be chayiv v'chatos, provided that you forgot before it landed. But if you actually remember the middle and it landed when you remember it, even he will be moida that you're going to be potter from the chatas. So everybody agrees that when it lands, it has to be in a matzav of shoyik.
So is
Now
that
we
the
can
case of
analyze.
Is that the case of the Sefer then? So how's the case of the Sefer differ then? If you could just point that out.
Oh, so the way Rabbi Ashi is learning is that the case of the Seifa is that's what the Bamed Devorim Mamurim is. Avaloi Chazer v'Shakach Potter. So the safest cases where you threw it and in midair you remember that it was Shabbos. If it lands and you know that it's Shabbos, you're going to be Potter from Karban Chatas. So the Resha where you're Chayiv is speaking where after you remembered in midair that it was Shabbos, you forgot again in midair that it was Shabbos. And when it landed, you didn't know that it was Shabbos. That's where you're going to be Chayiv. But the Seifa, which says that Klal is Potter, is speaking where in midair you remembered that it was Shabbos, and you remembered that it was Shabbos while it landed as well. So the Hanocha was not done in a Shogig, the Hanocha was done in Amazit because you knew it was Shabbos at the time that it landed.
And Yosy, why does it, he wants to make a chabura make a difference?
Because then you don't have a problem of Agudah b'yadai. If you throw something, Dalet Amis, Rishus Rabbim, and you're holding on to a string that it's connected to, even
Well,
if
everybody agrees that in that case, we're talking about something that's Agudah b'yodai.
at that point in the Gemara, where we were still going with Agudah b'yadai, the Gemara abandoned that shot. But at that point in the Gemara, where the Gemara thought that it was speaking that whatever you threw was connected to a string that you were holding in your hand, so at that point, that would impact your chiyuv for havora, because there's no chiyuv havora if you're still holding on to it, but chabura would be completely independent of anyone who's holding a string.
No, I understand, but now we departed from that whole theory.
Right.
We have now Rav and Rav Ashi arguing about what happens if you have no more power left to stop it.
Correct.
What's the difference if you threw it? We're not talking about Agudah b'yodai. We're talking about a regular object
Right.
that you're throwing at a dog that you don't like, right?
So you're talking about this case of the Mishnah. That means you were throwing it at a dog to make a chabur.
Yeah, because we have two different ways of reading the first part of the Mishnah,
Right.
and then we have a second case of Zorak Lasses Chabura. It's like a whole separate case.
Correct. It's a whole separate case.
According to Rav, it's the same shot. It's the same. The halacha is the same. You're still potter.
That's correct, because whenever you don't finish the malacha with the shogig, if the malacha isn't completed with the shogig, it's completed with the mezid, it's going to be potter.
Right, but it's then what's the chiddush? You're not adding anything to the first line in the Mishnah.
You want to know what is the additional chiddush by saying the case of chabura?
Right,
Any
according to
malacha.
Rav and according to Rav Ashi, why is the halacha different?
Well, let me look at the second thing you asked. Why the halacha is not different? The halacha b'chabura would be exactly the same as it would be for havara or zrika.
No, didn't Rav Ashi say that we have?
Rav Ashi says that Rav Ashi also agrees that the beginning of the malacha has to be in chiyuv and the end of the malacha has to be in chiyuv. In other words, the beginning of the malacha you had to have not known that it was Shabbos, and by the end of the malacha you had to have known that it was not Shabbos. You had to have not known that it was Shabbos, but if you remember in the middle, that's not a problem. All Rav Ashi says is if you remember in the middle, it's not a problem.
I thought Rav Ashi said that the only way you're potter is if because somebody intercepted it somebody or something intercepted it in the beginning.
That's in a case where you forgot again.
Right.
But if you actually remembered the whole way through, even he would be more than
Right. Okay, so Rav I don't understand. I don't know what's adding.
What Rava says is if in midair you remember that it was Shabbos, even if you forget again, you're still going to be potter. Once you remember, the game's over.
Okay, so now explain. Oh, okay. But chabura.
So chabura is the same thing. You threw it and then you remembered. Once you remembered, no matter what happens after that, you're going to be potter from a korban chatas on this malacha.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
That you're potter from a korban chatas?
Yeah.
It depends on where you are. If you're in Olam Hazeh, it's very good. You save yourself a couple of bucks. But then it's not really a tour, it's a deferment.
Now you use the term "the game's over," and he doesn't have to bring a chatas.
Right. So he's not zoicher to the kapara of a chatas.
Okay.
That's a
Okay.
different perspective.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, now, would I'm not sure if that's what you're asking, but you're asking why does the Mishnah, like I think Shlomi was touching upon it, why does the Mishnah have to change to a case of Chabur? What extra Chiddush do we learn out of the example when we're discussing Chabur? Right? Is that what you're asking?
Yep.
And I don't have an answer to that. I don't know. I'm not sure what, and maybe the Olim could help me. What reason, what extra lima do we know from the fact that the Mishnah also brings in a different malacha other than Zayrik? It could have picked Binyan, it could have picked any malacha. What's unique about Chabur? The thing that bothers me a little bit is that by Havara, anytime we're moving an object from Rishus to Rishus, or we're moving a Daled Amos, you require an Akira and you require a Hanocha. Those are two integral components of the malacha, and you have to be a shoygig by both those components. Chabura has nothing to do with Akira or Hanocha, so it's all one Maisa. So maybe it's actually a much bigger chiddush to say that if I remember it in the middle, as it's flying towards the target, if I remember it in the middle, that it would be potter, that's a big chiddush, because you don't need a Hanocha in Chabura. Whatever my input, my force that I put into the object when I threw it is done the moment it leaves my hand. It just didn't have the impact yet. It's almost similar to if you put bread in an oven to bake, you're done, right? By stopping it, it's stopping the result from occurring, but you've already done your whole thing. So why remembering in middle? Why should that patter you? So maybe that's the chiddush of the Mishnah, that even though I don't need the component of Hanacha here, everything that you need, all the input that you needed to make this malacha happen, you've already completed by throwing it. Still, if you remember that at Shabbos, before the results occur, you're going to be chayiv. You'll be part of.
Hold on.
So it's not a Daled Amos thing.
No, it's not a Daled Amos thing at all.
Because the
Hold on a second, by
intention-
By
the
Chabura-
oven,
intention is to
by
hurt
baking
and
in the
not
oven, you
to
couldn't
tear.
have that example, because if you remembered, you would quickly snatch it out of the oven. But here, you can't grab it back anymore.
Well, you have the
Listen,
string
Chabur
attached,
Yechayiv
right?
even if it doesn't hit the person.
No, you're not chayiv. The result has to occur. But once you've thrown it and left your hand, there's no more input required for you. There's no hanocha required. You've done all the action that you need to do to make this chabur happen. There's just a little bit of a delayed reaction. So even if you happen middle that it's Shabbos, but you've done the whole malach already.
Well, not really, because if it didn't hit the Chabura, then it's not done. It's not done.
No, you've done. The result has not yet occurred. It's like a time
Right.
release. But whatever your input, whatever physical action you had to do is done already.
The result is questionable.
The result didn't happen yet. So why is that a little different? The result, same thing by Daled Amos, is the result didn't happen yet, which is obviously there's a second part to that.
The difference is that by Havara, it's not the result we need. There's two components to the malacha. You
Right.
have to do an akira, and you have to do a hanacha.
Right.
Here, you only have to do the akira. Everything else happens by itself.
Isn't it questionable whether it would create a chabura? I mean, we don't know if it'll look,
Well, we're already here after the fact. We're already here after it already happened, right? The animal had a chabur, and now we're making a judgment. Was it shogig? Was it amazing?
Mm.
So there is a subtle difference, and what I told Mechi is a little bit wrong. Of course, you need the hanocha. You need it to hit the animal, and in either case, there is no physical. You don't need a physical input even for a ma'aser itself. I throw it when it lands by itself. I already put my koich into the beginning, but there's no halachic step. There's no halachic step that has to occur in the case of chabura, like there is in the case of havara and alaramis, where you need a halachic step of hanacha. You don't need a halachic step of hanacha for chabura. But even so, if you remember the middle, the Mishnah is saying that you'd be potter from a chatos, or you don't have the opportunity to bring the chatos to be mechaper.
But it doesn't turn into complete mazid because you weren't warned, so there's no
Yeah.
straw, right?
Never mind. Even if you do a mazid without a straw, you're chayiv kares.
So it turns into
You won't be
kares
chayiv kares for it either because you started with shogig. It's not a full mazid.
No,
It's
but in the
called
end,
nishtahin and nishtaher.
yeah, but in the end, if you realize, oh, it's Shabbos, then that's what it is. You're chayiv kares. That you don't bring a chatas anymore.
After you threw it, a guy throws something thinking that it's Monday, and in the
Yes.
middle of the air, he chaps at Shabbos, he's going to be chayiv kares?
Well, if the string is attached to it, of course,
Why would I be chayiv kares?
because you could stop it.
Oh, you're talking about in a case where I could have stopped it. What if I couldn't stop it?
You'd still be chayiv kares.
Why?
Because
That's
you knew-
very harsh.
You knew what he was
That's
doing.
very harsh. I only knew at the end after I threw it, even if I had a string attached to it. When I did the Akira, I was shogig.
But there's no akiri here. We're talking about trying to hurt somebody. We're not trying to talk about. That's why.
Oh, you're going back to the case of Chabura, not a case
Yeah,
of Akira, no.
of
The case of a
course.
Chabura, if I throw something and in the middle of the air, let's say it's not attached to a string, and in midair I chapped at a Shabbos. So you hold that should be chayiv kares?
Yeah, because it's mazid.
When I threw it, I was still shogig. It only became
He
easy
was
after I
still
left my hand.
he was still shogig with regards to Shabbos. He wasn't shogig with trying to hurt the animal. He was trying to hurt the animal when he threw it.
No, we
That's why the
understand
Mishnah
that.
is saying in this case, it's not about throwing a piece of wood because you wanted to move it from this side of the street to the other. That's why I believe that's why it's so specific. Because when
But
Shabbos,
I'm still a shogig. I didn't know that it was Shabbos.
but not when
I
it
mean,
hit him.
Pita, you're right. Pita would still not forgive me because I always intended to hurt the animal.
But not
But
when
I
it
wasn't
hit him.
over a Malacha Shabbos.
But when it hit him, you were over Malacha Shabbos because your whole intention was to hit him. Your whole intention wasn't to transport. the
Yeah,
piece
my
of wood
intention was to
from
hit him, but I didn't know that it was Shabbos.
But we're not. This is not the standard Akira and Anacha case.
It doesn't
This
make a
is-
difference. No matter what the Malacha is. Let's say it's Shechita. If I shecht on Shabbos and I don't know that it's Shabbos, I wanted to shecht the animal, I just didn't know it was Shabbos. Not knowing that it's Shabbos also makes something into a shogig. So I had the intent of doing the malacha. I wanted to do the shechita. I wanted to do the binyan. I wanted to do the ariga. In this case, I wanted to do the chabura. I just didn't know that it was Shabbos. That's a shogig. And
But if you remembered in middle, he's not shaking anymore.
right,
The Mishnah points out. I thought the Mishnah itself was very.
but I
specific.
didn't do the whole thing. I didn't do the whole thing as a mezid. In part of the malacha, I was a mezid. In part of the malacha, I was a shogig. In order to be chayiv kares, the entire malacha from beginning to end has to be mezid.
But isn't the entire objective here is to hurt the animal, and the animal only gets hurt not when you throw it. It only gets
you're
hurt
right.
when you
The
hit it.
entire objective is to hurt the animal on Monday. I didn't chap that it was Shabbos.
Okay, it's fine.
Okay, let's see the Gemara weiter.
Right.
Zok the Heilige Gemara weiter. Zeh haklal kol chayve chatois. Itmar. What happens in a zakes? I threw something, where we'll see it. This might be in a case where I threw something. It might be when I actually carried something. But shtei amis b'shogig. The first two amis after it left my hand was shogig, and then first two amis I chapped that it was Shabbos. Shtei amis b'mezid, but it didn't land after those two amis. It continued on another two amis. So my entire travel pattern was actually 6 amis. And shtei amis b'shogig. So I had a shogig at the beginning, I had a shogig at the end, but in the middle, it was no longer a shogig. So Rabbi Omer Potter, Rabbi holds this would be Potter, because once I remember in middle, it's ois mezid, it's ois shogig. And Rav Omer Chayiv, Rav holds it will be Chayiv. So let's understand, at first glance, if you have the Gemara saying that Rabbi says it's Potter, and Rabbi says it's Chayiv, you might think it's a machlokes. In fact, when we flush it all out to get an understanding, there's no machlokes at all. Rabbi who said it's Potter was referring to Zrika, and Rabbi who said it was Chayiv was referring to Havara. So let's see the Gemara. Rabbi Amar Potter. Rabbi says it's Potter. Afilu Rabbi Gamliel. The Amar ein yedia lachatzi shir. There's a halacha if I do a malacha and middle of the malacha I remember. So for instance, I'm carrying something dalad amis in Rishus Harabim. I carried it 2 amis, and I remembered that it's Shabbos. Then I forgot again. and I carried it the next 2 amos. So the halacha is the fact that I knew in the middle means nothing to Rabbi Gamliel, because a yediyah is only a yediyah after I did a whole malacha. If you're in the middle of a malacha and you had a yediyah, that doesn't count. So even according to Rabbi Gamliel, holds any yediyah l'chat shir, and it wouldn't be a hefsek. Hasam hu dechika gamer shiura b'shogi kagamer. That's because when you ended up finishing the malacha in Rabbi Gamliel's case, you ended up the malacha in the case of shogi. Aval hacha the b'mezid loy. But here, the middle 2 amis were done in the status of mezid. So uvamai, in order to understand what it is that Rabbah is saying, we need to know the case. If it was Zorik, how could you say that B'shas the Gemar Malacha it was mezid when the thing landed, when the thing that you threw landed, you were shogig. Ella, it must be b'mavir Rabbah who said that it's potter must be speaking about a case of when you were carrying it. So Rashi tells us el b'mavir v'chivin de b'yodei lamoid b'soif beis amois hamtsois. Since he could have stopped walking after Amma number 4, which is the end of the 2 middle set of Amos. Ishtakech the Gemar Shiur b'mezid. When he finished the shear of the Malacha, which was 4 Amos, it was mezid. So let's see this again. Rabba Omar Potter. So you walk 2 Amos in a matzav of shogig, then you remember that it was Shabbos, you walked another 2 Amos, and then you forgot again and you walked another 2 Amos. So Zokt Rabba, Afilu the Rabbi Gamliel, the Amr Ein Yediyah L'chat Shir, even according to Gamliel, it holds the fact that you remembered after 2 Amos is irrelevant. That's only Hasam Hu Dechikagamar Shiur B'Shogig Kagamar. That would be in the case where after 2 Amos I remembered, then I forgot again, and I continued the Malacha B'Shogig. There, Rabbi Gamliel says the fact that you remembered in the middle has no consequence. Abul Hacha the B'Mezid here. Since you finished the 4 Amos when you were in a matzav of mezid, because at that point, for the middle 2 Amos, you knew that it was Shabbos, then you're going to be potter. What's the case? If it was Zorik, it's all 6 Amos is one big malacha, and you ended up finishing off the malacha in shogig. El b'mavir, it's being a mavir. So therefore, once you walked 4 Amos, we could stop at that point, and at that point, the first 2 Amos were done with shogig. The second 2 Amos were done with mezid. Therefore, Rabbah holds surely it's potter. Rabbah Omer Chayiv. That was Rabbah who said it was potter. Rabbah Omer Chayiv. Rabbah says it's Chayiv, and he's going to be speaking about Zerg. The Army Yeshidi Elachachishir. Even according to the Rabbanan who holds that if you remember in middle, it does disrupt. It does disrupt the shogig. Hasam hu de biyadai. When does it disrupt it? That's only if you could stop it from continuing. But in the case where you threw it, where you can't stop it, it's going to continue traveling the 3rd set of 2 Amos and land after 6 Amos, loy, there it would not disrupt it, and therefore you're going to be chayiv. And again, the Gemara has to say, even Mavir, Harebi he could have stopped it from happening because he could have stopped walking. The Elabazarik. So at the end of the day, we have Rabbah and Rova who are not arguing. So just to chazer over what they said, if you throw something 6 Amos, for the first 2 Amos, you didn't know it was Shabbos. The middle 2 Amos, you knew it was Shabbos. And the last 2 Amos, you forgot again that it was Shabbos. That's going to be chayiv achatos. Because at the beginning, there was a yediyah, and at the end, there was a yediyah. However, if you're walking with an item, and for the first 2 Amos, you don't know that it's Shabbos, and for the second 2 Amos, you do know that it's Shabbos, there you'll be potter from a carbon, because when you finish the 4 Amos, you were in a matzav of mezid, and you're not able to bring a carbon if you're in a matzav of mezid.
Yosy, first, there's a name change here in the one.
Yes,
is Rob. It's supposed to be Rob,
they
right?
changed the gears from Rabbah to Rava.
Yeah, right. So I'm still not clear. Why is it different? Why is it? What changes in middle if somebody's okay, I'm not clear. Why is it change in middle?
Well, what happened was in the middle, after he traveled the first 2 Amos, he remembered that it was Shabbos. Right? So we're going back to the premise that our Mishnah laid out, that when you do a malacha, in order to be chayiv, a chatas, for having done a malacha b'shoyig, you have to be b'shoyig, you have to be oblivious to the fact that it was Shabbos from the beginning of the malacha to the end of the malacha. But if in the middle you find out that it's Shabbos, so at that point it's mazid, that disrupts the malacha. But that comes with certain guidelines. So if you were doing a malacha, and the malacha was you were carrying something in Rosh Hashanah, and in this case you carried something 6 Amos in Rosh Hashanah, and for the first 2 Amos you did not know that it was Shabbos. So that's a textbook case. It started off with a textbook case of shogig. You lifted something up in Rosh Hashanah and you walked 2 Amos, and then after you walked those 2 Amos, you remembered that it was Shabbos. So now, as you're continuing to walk the next 2 Amos, you're amazing. You know Shabbos and you continue to carry. Therefore, at the end of those 4 Amos, there is no chiyuv chatas.
Right. If it ends there, then it's for sure nothing. Right. Okay.
Now, even if it continues on, we consider that a separate item, because you at that point when you have traveled 4 Amos, you didn't have to continue on another 2. You could have stopped then. So we consider it that there was a mazid at the end of your 4 Amos, and therefore you're going to be potter from bringing a korban. But if you threw something, and as you threw it, you were a shogig, and now as it was flying through the air the first 2 Amos, you didn't know that it was Shabbos, and then you remembered for a flash that it was Shabbos, you can't do anything to stop it. So the full trajectory is the picture that you have to make your judgment call on. And what happened is by the time it landed, it was shogig again.
So the beginning and
therefore
end
you'd be chayiv a korban.
Uh-huh. Oh, so the difference is one is carrying, you could stop at the 4 hours.
By carrying, exactly. By carrying, you could stop it after 4 hours.
He can't stop at the okay.
So you have to look at the whole trajectory as one item. When you're walking, you can actually break it up amma by amma, because at any given point, you have the power to stop everything from happening.
And that's what Rabba and Rabba are saying. We're saying it's 2 different cases. One is talking about They're actually not arguing. It's just that one of them, again, I don't know who's who, because the gears have changed back and forth, but one mandar is referring to the case of Srika, and therefore you're chayiv a korban, and one mandar is talking about Havara, where you're walking with it, and therefore you would not be chayiv a korban. Sure.
Thank you. Okay, so let's see what the Gemara says weiter. So it seems like everybody would agree here, both Rab and Rava both agree, that the mere fact that in the middle of the trajectory, you remembered that it was Shabbos, that would not make it potter. You'd still be chayiv the korban, because the first 2 Amos were in a matzav of shogig, and the anocha was also in a matzav of shogig. Okay, so let's see the Gemara weiter. Omer Rabba, and again, the gears changes here as well. Zarek v'nocha b'fi kelev. You threw it into the mouth of a kelev. Tosfos points out that Zarek v'nocha seems like you threw it and it was not supposed to land in the Pia Kelev, or you didn't know that it would, or that wasn't your intention, and it just happened to have happened. But in fact, that's not how we're learning Pshat. We're learning Pshat is Zarek, and you threw it specifically to a dog. You threw something to a dog. So Tosfos suggests to take out the word v'nocha and just read Zarek b'Pia Kelev. You threw it to the dog, meaning you're playing catch with a dog, and you throw him a frisbee, you throw him something to catch. Or if you threw something into an oven, chayiv, you're going to be chayiv. Because we know if you threw it in the air and the dog snatched it out of the air, out of its trajectory, our Mishnah already says that case would be potter. So this case is where you actually specifically intended to throw something to a dog and the dog caught it. In fact, the Gemara, v'anant nan kol ta'achar, or kol ta'kelev, or shenishra potter. So the Gemara, hasam d'loy mechaven, hachata kamachaven. The Mishnah says it's potter is where I didn't have kavana to throw it to the dog. Rather, the dog just caught it. jumped at it and took it. Mashiach, in the case where we're saying is chayiv, is where you specifically had in mind to throw it to the dog. Now, Rashi adds another important point. And Rashi says, to come a chavin, since you're specifically aiming for the dog, therefore, machshavosoi mishavye le'mokai. So there's another dimension, another factor that Rashi brings in here, is that it has to be a mokam hanocha. And the mokam hanocha in the dog's mouth is not dalet al dalet. But since I specifically wanted it to land in the dog's mouth, that's where I aimed for, so that his machshava, to want the dog to catch it, is machshav the mouth of the dog like a mokam dalet al dalet, to ha'achshavi. So let's see what the Gemara says weiter. Amar Abibi Bar Abaye, Afana Namitinina. We also learned a brisa that says a similar concept. This is what it says: Yesh oichel achila achas. It's possible by eating one kazayis of food, v'chayev aleh adalat chatoyis v'asham echad. And from one achila of eating one kazayis, you'll actually be chayev 4 karbonas chatas and 1 carbon asham. How do you get that? Hatame, if someone's tameh she'achal chaylev. So right away, this chaylev was from a carbon. It was kodesh. The Gemara is going to say in a second. So you have a tameh eating kachim, b'shogig. That's carbon number 1. The part of the meat that he ate was not shuman, it was chaylev. So now there's a new chi of chatas for having eaten chaylev b'shogig. And v'noiser. This chaylev that he ate happened to have also been noiser. There's another chi of chatas for that. Mina Makdoshin, which we already said it was from hektish. And therefore, in addition to the chatoish you have for the tameh, for the chaylev, and for the noiser, there's going to be an asham ilosh, because you're damaging mom and hektish by eating its meat. So now you have an asham ilosh here. And b'yom kippurim, if you eat kezayis on Yom Kippurim, again, there's a chiyuv. Actually, it must be more than the kezayis, because I think that the achila that you do on Yom Kippur to mechayiv you has to be more than the kezayis. So, but Rashi does say specifically it was zayis echad. So let's see what the Gemara says over here. So you're chayiv 4 chatois and 1 asham. Reb Meir says actually you can squeeze another chi of chatos into here. Af im hoyse Shabbos, if it happened to have been Shabbos that day, the yitziyah bepiv, and while you were eating, you also walked from Rishus HaYochid to a Rishus HaRabim, chayiv, you're now chayiv hoitzah on Shabbos. Amru loy, so the Chacham told Reb Meir, you're mixing in a different action. Eino min Hashem. We're talking about Isur Achila, and you're throwing in Isur Hoitzah. That's not what we're looking for. We want to know that the Ma'isa Achila is going to trigger, and the Ma'isa Achila would not trigger the Isur Hoitzah. Frek the Gemara, even according to Reb Meir, where you can look at it a little bit more broadly, and you'll include any other Isurim that occur at the same time, is long, even though it's not an Achila that's causing the Isur, there shouldn't be at all an Isur Hoitzah here, because it's not normal to carry something in your mouth. And since it's not normal to carry something in your mouth, there should be no chi of chatos for this type of Hoitzah. It's a saw with a shinui. Ella, it must be from the fact that the mayor held, and even the Chacham was agreeable to him, that you would be chayav al tzaitzah if you carry something out in your mouth. It proves elakivin de kamachavin machshavosai mashvil emokim. Just like by the dog, we said, if I threw it to a dog and the dog caught it in his mouth, even though that's not a mokam dalet al dalet, but since I wanted the dog to catch it here, I'm machshav it like a mokam dalet al dalet, and there'll be a chiyuv. Hachanami, so too here, kiven de mechavin machshavosai, kiven de kamachavin kama machshavosai mishavel emokim. So Rashi says machshavosai shetzorach la'oichla balichosai. He wants to eat it as he's walking, and that makes it into that derech hatzolakach. So of course, this raya is very not pashut. We're talking about apples and oranges. Just because if I throw something to a dog and it lands in his mouth, I'm machshav his mouth as a makam dalid al dalid, that's where there's a proper hanacha. How does that say that if I carry something out with my mouth, that's called derech haitzah? It's two different things. Are we just saying that it's mind over matter? If I identify as a female, I'm a female. Is that what it's saying? It's not saying. It's not really saying that I can identify as anything I want. There has to be a connection. And in this case, the connection is a little bit difficult to understand. And in fact, Rabbi Akiva Eiger asks this kasha. The ArtScroll brings him down. I don't see that he's right on the Amud. It's a little bit shverlich the way Rashi is learning. What is the comparison between me being machshiv, the mouth of the dog as a makam dalad al dalad for the purposes of having a hanacha? What does that have to do with the fact that I carry food out of my mouth, that I'm machshiv it, and that makes it kederach? There's two different things, and they don't seem to have a direct connection to each other. Okay, hadron al chazorik, hadron al chazorik, hadron al chazorik, bilin neder. Sometimes I have to say bilin neder when I say hadron al. Okay, let's see the next Gemara. Now we're up to the new parak. Now I'm not sure. The time is now 7:02. So should we stop now, or should we continue? What time is Olam Daven?
I have time.
You have time, so let's continue. Haboyna.
Hey, well, I'm only one person. Hello, what's about anybody else?
Well, I think most people daven either at 7:15 or at 7:30, right? If there's anybody who wants us to stop, please let us know. Okay.
We all
so
don't put
continue.
minion here.
Okay. Haboyna, building. So we know one of the Isurim on Shabbos is binyan. Kama yivna, how much do you have to build for Yehei Chayiv and you'll be Chayiv? So even if you build a mashu, a tiny little thing, that's going to create a Chayiv Shabbos. There's no minimum share. V'amesates, chiseling, v'hamake b'patish. Make b'patish is not binyan. That's the final touch. That's also a malacha. So make b'patish, if you bang with your hammer. Now it's a question of what this make b'patish is. Rashi says this make b'patish is when you're trying to chisel out a stone from a mountain. What you do is you create a scrape. I forgot a score. You score the rock in the shape that you want it to come out of the mountain from, and then you bang it with a sledgehammer, and then it comes apart. So that after you finish scoring it, the final knock with the sledgehammer that's going to separate the stone from the mountain, that's Makeh b'Patish. That's how Rashi says. Tosfos disagrees. See, Tosfos quotes Rashi, after you score the whole shape of the rock, and then you give the last bang that actually separates the rock from the mountain, that's what Rashi learns. There were no stone construction in the Mishkan. It's not logical to suggest, even though you might consider it Makeh b'Patish, but it's not logical to suggest that the Tana would give us this example rather than have an example of a Makeh b'Patish on an actual keli, which did occur in the Mishkan. Elanir Lari, Dai Makeh b'Patish, Hainu, Machish Achroin, Shemak ala Kli, B'Shes Gmar Melacha. We're not talking about stones. This Makeh b'Patish is speaking about a keli. It's the last tap with the hammer that the blacksmith makes on the keli, which finishes the keli. Okay. Uva matzit, some other type of axe or hammer. That's Makeh b'Patish. Hakedeach kol shu chayiv. If you drill a small hole, you'll be chayiv. Now, this drilling is not a hole for the sake of a hole. You're drilling it because you're going to screw something into it. Because if it was just drilling a hole because you needed a hole somewhere, that would be called menakev, making a hole. Kodeach means I'm drilling a hole because it's a pre-hole for a screw that I might screw into it. Zeh klal. Kol oisem malacha umalachtem iskeyemes. Any person who does a malacha and the malacha it's a malacha that's made to remain. It's not gonna fall apart afterwards. For instance, if I dig a hole in sand and the sand's going to collapse right back into the hole, so it's not going to remain. So then b'Shabbos chayiv. Then you'll be chayiv on Shabbos. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, af hamakeh b'kornis al asadan b'shas malacha chayiv mepnei shehu misakeh malacha. If the blacksmith had some type of anvil, Victor showed us pictures of it when we learned it last time.
It was a weirdly formed type of bench that he had that allowed him to form metal in any shape that he needed. So it had curvature, it had point, it had different shapes sort of on it, so that when you're tapping your metal on it, it will allow the metal to take that form. Now, when you're working on that anvil, you're tapping a whole day on it, and you're tapping metal on the anvil itself can get somewhat distorted. So what they would do is after they finished doing a job, they would hammer directly on that anvil to smooth out any bumps that were in it from the malacha. So that's called as well a malacha. That's also being misaken his work because he's preparing it for use. He's preparing it for use to use again. So Rashi is even though you're not actually banging on the product that you're creating, you're banging on the tool that you use to create products. That's also called makam patish because that's something that was done. Zok the Gemara, Kol Shahu.
What is Bekornis? Sorry, I know it's
Cornice is like a hammer, like a blacksmith hammer. All right, let's see what the article touches. I think it's a blacksmith, and Satan I think is the anvil, which is that weird thing. Strikes with a hammer on the anvil, yeah. So the anvil was the thing that they formed steel on. They would put the flat piece of steel on it, and they would bang it with a hammer, and it would conform to the shape of the anvil in that area that he was banging on. Okay, what can you do with a tiny, tiny little thing? What are you talking about? An oni would dig a very small little hole, not very deep at all, so that he can hide his prutas in the sand. Where did you find such a malacha was done in the Mishkan? The kavasag of Mishkan shekin toifer yiriyos choifrin guma latznia b'machtein. When they used to sow the yiriyos in the Mishkan, they would save and store and protect their needles by sliding them under the sand. So even the slightest little amount of digging has an impact that we can use for our melechas Mishkan. Abai Amar, nobody would ever bury needles in the sand. Even the mishtachi, since they will become rusty if they're resting in the sand, lo avdachi, surely no one did that. So what is a malacha mu'etes that you find in the Mishkan? Ella shekein ani oisa pitpute kira ketana lishvois alea keder ketana. And ani to cook a very small pot, he would make a mini tripod, which was a tiny little thing. That's the malacha that we're talking about, the mini malacha of binyan. The kavasag of a Mishkan, where did you find they did something like this in the Mishkan? Is mevashlis hamanim l'tzvah yiros. Let's say the people who were preparing the dye to color the yiros in the Mishkan, what if they ran out of dye and they needed a little bit of extra dye? Shechashu malachtan, they ran out of dye. Oisin pitpute kira katana lishvois alea yera katana. They would make a tiny little tripod to cook a tiny little pot of a tiny little bit of dye just to make up for the deficit of what they were missing. Rabbi Achabi Yaakov Amar, that doesn't make sense either, because they never prepared anything in the Mishkan just. They always did it by rafkus. There should be plenty extra, because einanius b'makam ashiris. The Mishkan was done by ashiris, and they didn't do it with tzimtzum. But everything they did was they made extra. So it's not logical to say that in fact by the Mishkan they had to make a second batch to fulfill a deficit because they for sure prepared more than enough. Ella, so what's the malacha that we're talking about? If a guy's sitting in his dining room and there's a little hole in his wall, even though it's a small hole, he'll still patch that hole. The kavasag of Mishkan, you found that idea of patching by the Mishkan. What if a worm got into one of the krushim and made a little hole in it? They wouldn't replace the krushim. What they would do is they would use a filler. Matav l'soicha aver. They would melt lead into the hole to fill the hole. And that's how they filled those holes. So you see, even a tiny little repair is considered binyan. If you chisel a stone, you're going to be chayiv. Rashi is Moshe. No, I'm sorry, you don't chisel. Mitzadit. If you're placing a stone, the very lowest row, the bottom row that you were building house, so what you do is you have to place the stone in the sand, and you have to make sure it's perfectly level. So if you're placing the stone on the lowest row of a house on the sand, so you're adjusting the sand to make sure it's perfectly level and to make sure that it sits firmly planted in the earth, chayiv, that's a malacha of bana.
Placing the Adonim.
I'm sorry?
Like placing the Adonim.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it could be that's where it was done. In Echlem, it's a good point. But I don't have to do that. I have to level it off. If one person put the stone, one of the bricklayers put the block in place, and the other bricklayer put cement on it, the person who put the cement on is chayiv. So you see, merely placing the stone without cementing it in would not be chayiv. So how could Shmuel say just adjusting the stone into place, that in and of itself would be chayiv? Clearly, you see from this brisa that you have to put cement. According to what you're saying, I'll make it even more difficult because I have a third brisa that says something else. Rabbi Yosy Omer v'afilu hela v'niach al gabe dimo shalavanim. Even if I merely picked up a block and put it on top of a row of a previously set blocks, chayiv. So there I'm putting it on. I'm not even being mitzvah. I'm just placing it on top of blocks. So we have three different things. We have Shmuel who said you have to set it into position in the earth. We have mikotza lakotza. We have someone who says if you just put a brick on top of other bricks, you're chayiv. And then we have a brisa that says you have to have cement. There's three areas of building: tasa, the lowest row; mitzia, the center row; ve'ila, and the top row of a building. Tasa, the lowest row, is what Shmuel was talking about. Boit tudude, va'afra. It needs to be set in earth without cement, but it needs to be adjusted in position to be perfectly straight, and you need to pile up some earth against it. And that's what Shmuel meant when he said the Mitzvah to 7 Chayiv. He was speaking about the lowest row. Mitzia, which is the bulk of the wall, which is all the rows from the foundation up to the top. Bo namitina, they need cement. So there you're not chayiv until you place the block in the row and you put cement on it to seal it in. But Eloi, the very top row, ba'anocha ba'alma, you don't even need cement. Just placing it on top of the lower rows is considered proper building. So therefore, all three halachas are true, referring to different parts of the wall. Va'mesates. Mesates is chiseling. Mesates mishumai mechayiv. Why is mesates chayiv? Rav Omer mishum boina. Rav holds its boina. Shmuel Omer mishum makeh bepatish. It's al makeh bepatish. Now makeh bepatish. Why would Rav say it's not makeh bepatish? Very, very simple. Because when I'm chiseling out a stone, sure, I'm completing the stone, but I'm not nearly completing the binyan. I'm just preparing the stone to be able to be used to be built. So therefore, Rav holds its boina, and it's not makeh bepatish. Shmuel Omer mishum makeh bepatish, because you look at the stone itself. This stone itself, you've done the final malacha on it. Ha'izin nekev belul shultan hagoyim. The way I envision a chicken coop of what the Gemara is talking about is it's a big wooden box. And could you imagine the stench that builds up in that wooden box? So they would make a hole on top to let some air escape, and therefore it wouldn't smell so bad. Rav Omer mishum boina, it's called boina. Ushmuel Omer mishum makeh bepatish, that's called makeh bepatish. How about ayil shufsa bikufina, the mora? This is what I wanted to show a video for. When you replace the handle of an axe, there's the metal axe itself, the blade of the axe, that has a hole in it. And if you just stip a wooden handle into that hole, it's not going to hold. It's going to loosen up. So what they would do is after they stipped the handle into the axe, they put wedges in on top. Now, maybe I'll do it for we only need it for like 1 second. So I'll play just a part of a video. It'll take mamish 1 second. Okay, here we go.
A proper axe handle is going to come with its own wooden wedge. And a proper axe handle is also going to have what we call a kerf cut in here, which is basically a cut that splits the two pieces. What we're going to do is we're going to place this in here, make sure that it fits. It's not too wide. If it is, we need to trim it down. Once we determine that, we're going to put a little bit of wood glue on here and seat it in. Just glue the bottom half. Don't get the glue up on the top. It'll just make a mess.
That's one part of it, and then there's another part of it, which was they actually, even after they put that wedge in, they actually put a secondary set of wedges.
See, make sure I'm centered right on the wood wedge, and once that's done, I'll drive it in.
Okay, so that's the makeh b'patish of an axe, putting that final wedge in that completes the insertion of the handle, and it makes sure that the handle will not loosen up. So here's the cases. Ayil shufiza b'kafina demora Rav Amar mishum boinu Rav hold atzboinu Shmuel Amar mishum makeh b'patish. Utzricha, you need Rav and Shmuel to express their machloikis as to whether it's boinu according to Rav or makeh b'patish according to Shmuel in all these three cases. The Yashmin Kamaisa, if they only told us this halacha when you were chiseling a stone, Ba'hika Amar Rav, that's where Rav would say it's binyan. Shum derech binyan bekach. It's part of its normal way of building by preparing stones. But drilling a hole in the chicken coop, the ein derech binyan bekach, that's not the way you normally build. It's a small little thing. Ema moidel Shmuel, maybe he'll be moidel that it's not called binyan, rather it's called makeh b'patish. The Yashin Baha, and if it was only by the lul that Rav said it's binyan, B'hakam Rav mishum dedanim binyan, the Abdei Lavira, you are making it to finish off the chicken coop because it does create a ventilation opening. So it is somewhat binyan. Aval shufta b'kofina demara, but just putting the wedges into the handle of the axe, the ein derech binyan bekach, that's surely not binyan. You're not even in a house. So it's not binyan at all. Ema moidel Shmuel kamash Shmuel, it's still binyan because Rav holds that's binyan as well. And if you only had the case of the axe handle, and there Shmuel said makeh b'patish and not binyan, but Shmuel of a Bahanach Tarti, but the chicken coop and the stone, which are more doimit to binyan, aim and moed Rav, maybe Shmuel would hold that it's binyan, tricha. Therefore, you need the machloikis shared in both places. Which from boim there, misates mishamai mechayev. Why are you chayev when you chisel, which is the shayla we just had? So achvile biyadei mishum makeh b'patish. Rabbi Yochanan went like this to show him that it's makeh b'patish. In fact, the more v'nant nana misates ve'a makeh b'patish. We have a mishnah that lists off misates and makeh b'patish as two separate items. So clearly, it's not makeh b'patish. If the Gemara ema misates hamakeh b'patish. If you read the Mishnah hamisates hamakeh b'patish, then makeh b'patish is merely explaining what the malacha of misates is. I guess we can stop here.
Yosy, I'm surprised that you didn't say anywhere of today's learning to bring down your raya with the guy who throws the thing off the roof and the guy who takes a bat and hits it on the way down. Who's chayiv?
Oh, that's my favorite shayla.
Yeah, with your favorite shayla.
I was very focused on trying to finish the daf.
I figured somewhere it would have made it in.
Have a safe trip.
Have a safe trip.
Thank you very much.
Have a safe
Yes,
trip.
Mashal, you should go and come back.
Have a safe trip.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Customs should go easy.
Yeah, and then you shouldn't
Keep us posted.
you shouldn't meet up with any deer on the way.
Yeah, please don't.
Amen. Thank you. Amen.
All right.